My name is Lily.
I'm 15.
And the day everything shattered started with my best friend saying, "Come on, it'll be epic." I should have been home working on my essay. I should have been in my room with my sketchbook, headphones on, safely invisible the way I liked it. Instead, I was standing at the edge of Blackwood Forest with Ethan Cole, watching him grin that golden boy grin that made everyone in our town melt. "Trust me," he said, slinging his arm over my shoulder like he'd done 1,000 times before. "My dad won't even notice I took the truck. We'll hike to Devil's Peak, get some sick photos for my college apps, and be back before dinner." I hesitated. I always hesitated. That was my thing. Quiet Lily. Careful Lily. The girl who thought twice before speaking once. "I don't know, Ethan. Those trails are marked dangerous for a reason." He laughed, the kind of laugh that makes you feel small for worrying. "That's exactly why nobody goes there. That's what makes it perfect." I should have said no. But when you're the scholarship kid who spends lunch in the art room and your only real friend is the mayor's son, the kid everyone loves, you don't say no. You say yes because maybe, just maybe, being adventurous will make you less invisible. So I climbed into his truck. The forest was beautiful in that dying light kind of way, all amber and shadow. We hiked for maybe 40 minutes, our phones capturing the golden hour, his voice filling every silence with stories about his latest lacrosse game, about college scouts, about the girl he was thinking of asking to prom. I listened. I always listened. That was my role. "Up there," he said suddenly, pointing to a rocky outcrop that jutted over the valley like a broken tooth. "That's the shot." My stomach tightened. "Ethan, there's literally a sign that says unstable rock formation. Signs are for tourists." He was already moving, climbing over the safety barrier like it was a suggestion, not a warning. I followed because I always followed. The view was breathtaking.
I'll give him that.
The whole valley spread out below us, trees blazing orange and red, the town a scatter of lights just starting to flicker on. Ethan was setting up his phone, looking for the perfect angle. "Move over there," he said, gesturing toward the edge. "I want you in the shot. Makes it look less staged." I stepped closer to the rim, my heart hammering. Heights made my hands sweat. Everything made my hands sweat. That's when I heard it. A sound like distant thunder, but wrong. Too close. Too sharp. "Ethan?" He wasn't looking at the view anymore. He was crouched down, examining something near his feet, a massive boulder perched on the edge of the outcrop. And he was pushing it. "Ethan, what are you?" "I just want to see if it'll roll," he said, and there was something in his voice, something reckless and hungry. "Don't. Please don't." But he pushed harder. His face flushed with effort, grinning like this was a game. The boulder shifted.
Groaned.
And then everything moved at once. The rock tipped over the edge, and the ground beneath it collapsed like a broken promise. I felt the world tilt, heard Ethan yell something, and then I was falling, rocks and dirt cascading around me, the sky spinning, my body slamming into something hard, and again, harder, until the darkness came up to meet me like deep water.
Pain.
That was the first thing I knew when I woke up. Not sight, not sound. Just pain. Everywhere, radiating from my leg like fire spreading through dry grass. I tried to move and screamed. The sound bounced off rock walls, came back to me distorted. I was surrounded by darkness, buried under rubble. My leg twisted at an angle that made my vision swim. "Ethan." My voice cracked, desperate. "Ethan, help." Silence. Then, faintly, his voice from somewhere above. "Lily? Oh my God, Lily, are you okay?" "I can't move. My leg, something's wrong with my leg. You have to get help." A pause. Too long. Okay, yeah. I'm calling 911 right now. Just hold on." I waited in the dark, every breath shallow because deeper ones made my ribs scream. Time became meaningless. Minutes or hours. I couldn't tell. The pain was the only thing that felt real. Then I heard voices. Adult voices. Rescue teams. Someone shouting coordinates. Light, finally, cutting through the cracks in the rocks above me. "We've got her. She's conscious." Hands, careful but urgent, clearing debris. Someone saying my vitals, someone else radiating calm competence. And then I was being lifted, strapped onto a board, carried out into open air that felt like ice against my face. I saw Ethan standing with the paramedics, his face streaked with dirt and tears. He looked destroyed. I tried to stop her, he was saying, voice breaking. She wanted to climb out farther for a photo. I told her it wasn't safe, but she's been under a lot of stress lately. I think she just wasn't thinking clearly. The paramedic nodded sympathetically. It's okay, son. You did the right thing calling for help. I wanted to speak. Wanted to say that wasn't what happened. But my throat was raw, my mind fuzzy from shock, and the words wouldn't form right. When I tried to say, he pushed the boulder. What came out was a garbled moan that made them exchange worried glances. She gets like this sometimes, Ethan continued, and his voice was so sincere, so worried. Impulsive. Emotional. I've been worried about her. The paramedic looked at me with a new expression. Pity mixed with concern. Don't worry, sweetheart, she said gently. We're going to take care of you. But I could see it in her eyes. She believed him. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and fluorescent lights, and a paramedic asking me questions I couldn't quite process. Do you know what day it is? Can you tell me your name? Do you remember what happened? I remember trying to answer. I remember the words feeling thick and wrong in my mouth. I remember Ethan in the background, still talking, still spinning his story, his voice following me like smoke. The hospital smelled like bleach and fear. They wheeled me into a room too bright, too cold, and surrounded me with machines that beeped and hummed. A doctor examined my leg, her hands gentle but thorough, her face professionally neutral. Compound fracture of the femur, she said to someone I couldn't see. Multiple lacerations. Possible concussion. We'll need x-rays, CT scan, the works. My mother arrived while they were setting my leg. I heard her voice before I saw her, high and panicked, demanding to know what happened. Ethan's voice again, patient and sad, explaining how I'd insisted on climbing higher, how he'd tried to stop me, how he'd called for help the second I fell. She's been so stressed lately, he said. About school, about college applications. I think it just got to be too much. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. When she finally came into my room, her eyes were red, her hands shaking as she touched my face. Oh, baby, she whispered. Why didn't you tell us you were struggling? I tried to speak. Tried to say I wasn't struggling, that Ethan was lying, that none of this was my fault. But the words tangled in my throat, lost in the haze of pain medication they'd started pumping into my fore. There was one doctor, though. An older woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and sharp eyes that didn't miss much. Dr. Chun. She asked questions that felt different from everyone else's. Tell me about the fall, she said, clipboard in hand. In your own words. I tried.
God, I tried.
But my tongue felt swollen, my thoughts scattered. Boulder. Ethan pushed. You pushed yourself? She asked gently.
No, Ethan.
He pushed. The rock. She wrote something down. You're saying Ethan pushed a rock? Yes. And that caused you to fall? Yes. She looked at me for a long moment. The paramedics said you were quite agitated, that you were confused about what happened. Not confused. He's lying. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. She made another note. I see. We'll talk more when you're feeling better. But we never did. Because the next day, when I asked to see her, the nurses told me Dr. Chen had finished her shift. A different doctor took over my case, younger, friendlier, and he never asked me what happened. Just checked my vitals, adjusted my medication, and told my parents I was doing well, considering the trauma. The trauma. As if the broken bones were the only thing that hurt. Before I tell you what happened in the weeks that followed, what I discovered, and what I finally did about it, tell me what time it is where you are, and where you're listening from. I want to know how far a story about stolen truth and finding your voice can travel. Darkness isn't silent. Nobody tells you that. People think being trapped means being alone, but I was never alone in those weeks I spent immobilized in my bedroom, my leg encased in a cast from hip to ankle. I heard Everything. The house was full of whispers. I heard my parents on the phone with the school counselor. Yes, we've noticed some changes in her behavior. She's always been quiet, but lately withdrawn. Secretive. My mother's voice, tight with manufactured concern. We think she might be struggling with some things. Anxiety, maybe depression. I wanted to scream that I wasn't struggling with anything except having a best friend who pushed a boulder and blamed me for it. But my mouth felt full of cotton, my thoughts slow from the pain medication they kept feeding me. I heard my dad talking to Ethan's father, the mayor, in our living room. Of course we understand. Boys that age, they experiment with boundaries. Ethan was trying to help. It's not his fault Lily has these episodes. Episodes. The word made my skin crawl. Ethan visited once, 3 days after the accident. He sat in the chair by my bed, his face a perfect mask of concern, and held my hand like we were still friends. "I'm so sorry this happened," he said softly. "I should have been watching you more carefully. I know you've been going through stuff." I stared at him. "I wasn't going through anything. You pushed that rock. You caused the collapse." His eyes filled with tears. Real tears. He was good. "Lily, I know the medication makes things confusing, but we both know you climbed out there. I tried to pull you back, remember? You were talking about how you wanted to feel something real, how you were tired of being invisible." "I never said that. The doctors said memory loss is normal with head trauma." His voice was so gentle, so reasonable. "I'm not mad at you. I'm just glad you're alive." He squeezed my hand and left. I stared at the ceiling and felt something inside me crack that had nothing to do with broken bones. 2 days later, some girls from school visited. Sarah and Mackenzie, the kind of girls who'd never spoken to me before the accident, but now showed up with a teddy bear and sympathetic smiles. "We just wanted you to know we're thinking of you," Sarah said, perching on the edge of my bed like she was afraid I might break or explode. Mackenzie nodded. "Ethan told us what happened. That must have been so scary, feeling like you needed to do something so extreme."
I blinkser her.
Extreme? You know. She exchanged a glance with Sarah. "Climbing out there. When you were feeling overwhelmed." I wasn't feeling overwhelmed. I was standing where Ethan told me to stand. For a photo. Sarah's smile got tighter.
Right.
"Of course. But Ethan said." "Ethan's lying." The room went silent. Mackenzie shifted uncomfortably. "Lily, I know you're going through a lot right now, but Ethan's really worried about you. He feels terrible. He even started a GoFundMe for your medical bills." That stopped me cold. "He what?" "Yeah, it's really sweet. He put up this whole post about mental health awareness and being there for friends who are struggling. It's raised like $3,000. My stomach turned. He was profiting off this. Not just emotionally, but actually making himself look like a hero while I was stuck in this bed, labeled as the girl who is too unstable to trust with her own story. They left soon after, their visit clearly making them uncomfortable. But their words stayed with me, poisoning the air. The days blurred together. My bedroom became a prison. Friends from school sent get well cards that all said the same thing. "Hope you feel better soon. Take care of yourself." Nobody asked what really happened. Nobody questioned Ethan's version. I started noticing things. Little things. The way my mother would check on me multiple times a night, like she was afraid I might hurt myself. The way my dad hid anything sharp or potentially dangerous. The way they spoke to me in those careful, soft tones you use with someone fragile. They'd put me on suicide watch in my own home, and I hadn't even tried to kill myself. At night, I'd lie awake and replay that day over and over. Ethan's face as he pushed the boulder. The excitement in his eyes. It wasn't an accident. It was curiosity, recklessness, the kind of thoughtless destruction that comes from never facing consequences. And when it went wrong, when I fell, he'd made a choice. He could have told the truth. He could have said, "I did something stupid and my friend got hurt." Instead, he decided I was expendable. That my reputation, my sanity, my truth, all of it was worth less than protecting his perfect image. I started having nightmares. Not about the fall, but about drowning. About being underwater, screaming, and watching people walk past above the surface, unable or unwilling to hear me. One afternoon, about 2 weeks in, my mother brought me my laptop. The school counselor thought it might help if you journaled about your feelings. I stared at the laptop, then at her. My feelings? Yes, sweetheart. Dr. Martinez says that sometimes when we're dealing with depression or anxiety, it helps to write things down, to process what we're going through. Dr. Martinez, the therapist they'd scheduled me to see once I could leave the house. Because of course I needed therapy. Not because I'd been lied about and betrayed, but because I was the problem. I took the laptop. But I didn't journal. I started researching articles about gaslighting, about how abusers rewrite narratives, about the social power of being believed. I read about other cases where the victim story was dismissed because the perpetrator was more likable, more credible, more important. I wasn't alone in this. That knowledge didn't make it hurt less, but it made me feel less crazy. And then one night, unable to sleep despite the pain medication, I decided to look through my phone's cloud backup. I'd been told my phone was lost, but all my photos should have backed up automatically. I found the photos from that day. Ethan and me in his truck, smiling. The forest trail, golden in the sunset. The warning sign at Devil's Peak, clear as day. And then the last photo he'd taken, of me standing near the edge, my expression uncertain, clearly uncomfortable. I looked at that photo for a long time. At my body language, tense and unwilling. At the timestamp, 5:47 p.m. The accident happened at 5:52 p.m. 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, my entire life had changed. I kept scrolling through the backup, looking for anything else. That's when I noticed something strange. My voice memos app showed a recording from that day. 47 minutes long. Recorded from 5:15 p.m. to 6:02 p.m. My heart started pounding. I didn't remember starting a recording. I must have hit it accidentally when I put my phone in my pocket. But if the recording existed in my cloud backup, that meant I sat up so fast my legs screamed in protest. If it was in the cloud, it had to have uploaded before my phone died. Which meant my phone had survived the fall. Which meant it might still be out there. Or someone had it. The question was who? Why would they? He was Ethan Cole, captain of the lacrosse team.
Honor roll.
Mayor's son. The boy who volunteered at soup kitchens and posed for photos at ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Golden child of a golden family. And I was just Lily. Quiet Lily. Poor scholarship Lily, whose parents could barely afford the medical bills. The girl who nobody noticed until she did something unstable. Social media made it worse. Ethan posted about the accident, called it a wake-up call about mental health awareness. He shared resources for teen depression hotlines. People commented with heart emojis, calling him brave for speaking out, for being such a good friend to someone struggling. The GoFundMe he'd started had raised over $5,000. The description made me sound like a charity case, a girl on the edge who'd almost jumped and was now fighting her way back from a dark place. Reading it made me want to throw up. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, but I couldn't reach it from my bed. And besides, I kept thinking about that recording in my cloud backup. About my phone supposedly lost. Where was it? I waited until my mother left for her shift at the diner. Until my father was in the garage, working on some project that let him avoid talking about feelings. Then I used my crutches to make my way downstairs, every step sending shocks of pain through my leg despite the medication. My backpack from that day was in the hall closet. Nobody had bothered to unpack it or throw it away. It just sat there, mud-stained and forgotten. I sat on the floor and pulled it toward me, unzipped the main compartment. Empty except for my water bottle and a granola bar wrapper. The front pocket, empty. The side pocket, nothing but a crumpled tissue. I sat there, frustrated tears building. It had to be somewhere. Then I noticed the small hidden pocket on the back, the one I usually forgot existed. I unzipped it. My phone. My phone was there. Cracked screen, but there. The battery was dead, but it was real, solid, proof that someone had lied. Because if my phone was in my backpack, and my backpack had come home with me from the hospital, that meant someone had found it at the scene, had put it in my bag, had told everyone it was lost when it was sitting in my house the whole time. My hands shook as I hobbled back upstairs, clutching the phone like a lifeline. I plugged it in, waited the agonizing minutes for it to power on. The screen lit up, fractured but functional. Notifications flooded in, dozens of messages from those first days after the accident. Concerned friends. Ethan, asking if I was okay. My parents, trying to reach me before they knew I was in the hospital. And then I went to voice memos. There it was. 47 minutes. From 5:15 p.m. to 6:02 p.m. I pressed play with trembling fingers. Static at first. Rustling fabric. My voice faint. I don't know, Ethan. Those trails are marked dangerous for a reason. His laugh. That's exactly why nobody goes there. The whole hike captured. His stories about lacrosse. His voice filling the silence. And then, up there. That's the shot. Ethan, there's literally a sign that says unstable rock formation. Signs are for tourists. My heart pounded. I fast-forwarded, looking for the moment. Found it. Move over there. I want you in the shot. Heavy breathing. The sound of effort. Ethan, what are you? I just want to see if it'll roll. My voice, smaller, scared. Don't. Please don't. The grinding of rock. My scream. The crash, deafening through the phone's speaker. And then silence, except for the sound of rocks settling, my muffled crying from somewhere far below. And then his voice, clear as day. Okay. Okay, think. A long pause. Footsteps on rock. She climbed out there herself. She's been acting weird lately. Stressed about school. Yeah, that works. Mental health thing. They'll buy that. More footsteps. The sound of him climbing down slightly, closer to where I was trapped. Lily? Oh my God, Lily, are you okay? His voice shifting, taking on that panicked, concerned tone. The performance beginning. I listened to the rest. My desperate pleas for help. His reassuring lies. The arrival of the rescue team. Him telling them his story, the one he'd invented while I lay bleeding. And then something else. After the paramedics had taken me away, after things had quieted down, I heard another voice on the recording.
Faint but there.
Is this hers? A man's voice. One of the rescue workers. Yeah, must have flown out of her pocket when she fell. Ethan's voice, quick. I'll hold on to it. Make sure she gets it back.
He'd had my phone the whole time.
He'd found it. He'd known it might contain evidence. And instead of destroying it, he'd put it in my backpack, probably figuring the battery would die, and I'd never think to look. Or maybe he thought I'd look. I'd hear the recording, and still no one would believe me over him. The arrogance of that made my blood boil. But he'd made a mistake. He'd underestimated how much I'd be willing to fight. I saved the recording to 3 different cloud services. Emailed it to myself. Sent it to a separate email account I created just for this. I wasn't going to let this disappear. Then I sat in my room, phone in hand, and thought about what to do with it. I could go to the police. But I'd already tried to tell them at the hospital, my words dismissed as confused rambling from a concussed teenager. Would they listen now? Or would the mayor make a few calls and bury it? I could post it online. But that felt reckless, like I'd lose control of my own story. It would become a viral moment, dissected by strangers, turned into entertainment.
No.
I needed to do this differently. I needed to make people see the truth in a way they couldn't ignore or explain away. My art teacher, Ms. Rivera, was the only one who looked at me like I was still a person, not a tragedy. She visited the next day, bringing my sketchbook from school. I thought you might want this, she said. Art can be therapeutic. I took it with shaking hands. Then I made a decision. Ms. Rivera, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you believe I tried to hurt myself that day? She looked at me for a long moment, her dark eyes steady.
No.
I don't. Why not? Because I've taught you for 3 years, Lily. I know the difference between someone who's struggling and someone who's being crushed by someone else's weight. She sat on the edge of my bed. What really happened? So I told her everything. And then I played her the recording. When it finished, her jaw was tight, her hands clenched. That little bastard. I almost laughed at hearing my proper, measured art teacher curse. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to paint it, I said. All of it. And I'm going to show everyone at the spring art fair. She was quiet for a moment. That's going to cause problems.
Good.
She studied my face, then nodded slowly. Okay, then let's make sure it's unforgettable. The spring art fair was a tradition in our town, held every year in the town square. Local artists, student exhibitions, food trucks, the whole community turning out to celebrate. It was the biggest event before prom, the kind of thing the mayor always gave a speech at. I'd been planning to submit 3 pieces for the student showcase. Small landscapes, safe choices. The kind of art that gets polite applause and doesn't make anyone uncomfortable. Instead, I created something else entirely. It took me 2 weeks of working in secret, my hands cramping, my leg aching, but I pushed through the pain. Ms. Rivera smuggled me supplies. Large canvases that she said were extras from the school art room. Professional-grade paints. Better brushes than I'd ever owned. The school's budget can handle it, she said when I protested. Consider it an investment in truth. I started with the first painting. Ethan and me in his truck heading to the forest. I painted every detail I could remember. The way he'd draped his arm over my shoulder, casual ownership. The way I'd looked out the window, already uncertain. In the background, barely visible, a clock showing the time, 4:30 p.m. And on the dashboard, his phone, showing a text from his dad. Remember, college scouts are watching. Make this count. The title, The Golden Boy and the Quiet Girl. The second canvas showed the forest trail. I painted the warning sign in stark detail, every letter crisp and clear. Danger. Unstable rock formation. Area close. Ethan climbing over the barrier, his face eager, excited. Me behind him, hesitant. And in the corner, so small you'd have to look closely, my hand reaching out as if to stop him, frozen in permanent failure. The title, Suggestions Are for Tourists. The third was the hardest to paint. My hands shook every time I tried to capture his expression as he crouched by that boulder. I went through 3 attempts before I got it right. That look of reckless curiosity, of wanting to see what would happen without thinking about consequences. His hands on the rock, pushing, the strain in his arms. And me, standing too close to the edge, my phone visible in my jacket pocket, the red record light, so tiny most people would miss it. The title, I Just Want to See If It'll Roll. I painted for hours every day, ignoring the pain in my leg, the exhaustion that came from the medication. My mother would check on me and see me with my sketchbook, think I was just doodling for therapy, and leave me alone. I didn't tell my parents what I was really doing. I didn't tell anyone except Ms. Rivera. The fourth painting was the collapse itself. I painted it like a freeze frame, the moment between before and after. The boulder mid-tumble. The ground cracking beneath my feet. The sky tilting. Ethan's face in the background, and this is what I spent the most time on, his expression. Not horror. Not immediate regret. But something else.
Surprise.
The kind you feel when an experiment produces unexpected results. And in the very corner, painted so realistically it looked 3-dimensional, my phone flying from my pocket, screen lit up with a voice memo still recording, 42:15 and counting. The title, The Moment Everything Changed. The fifth painting was my bedroom. Me in the bed, leg encased in plaster from hip to ankle. But I didn't paint myself as a victim. I painted myself as a prisoner. The cast like chains. My parents in the doorway, their faces carefully arranged into expressions of concern that didn't reach their eyes. And Ethan sitting in the chair, holding my hand, his face the perfect mask of a worried friend. But I painted his reflection in the window behind him, and in the reflection, he was smiling. In the corner of the painting, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, my backpack. And peeking out from the hidden pocket, just the edge of my phone, the cracked screen catching the light. The title, The Truth Doesn't Matter If Nobody Wants to Hear It. I painted a sixth canvas, one I hadn't originally planned. This one was different. It showed the town square, the art fair, crowds of people. And in the center, a girl standing in front of 5 paintings, her crutches visible, her chin raised, pressing play on a phone. And in the crowd, various faces, some shocked, some angry, some guilty. Each face carefully rendered to be recognizable if you knew who to look for. The mayor, the paramedic who'd believed Ethan's lies, the girls from school who'd visited me with their pitying smiles, my parents, the school counselor, Dr. Martinez, the therapist I was supposed to see. All of them painted in the moment of realization, of being forced to confront what they'd chosen to ignore. The title, The Day the Quiet Girl Spoke. Ms. Rivera looked at them when I was finished, really looked, taking in every detail. She was quiet for a long time. "These are going to destroy him," she finally said. "Good. His family will come after you. They have money. Lawyers. I have the truth." She met my eyes. Truth doesn't always win, Lily. Especially not against power. I know. I touched the edge of the final canvas, felt the dried paint under my fingers. But I have to try. Because if I don't, if I just let this go, then I'm telling every other quiet girl out there that her truth doesn't matter. That it's easier to be silent than to fight. Ms. Rivera's eyes were bright with something that looked like tears, but she blinked them back. "Okay then. Let's make sure everyone sees them." We had 1 week until the art fair. 1 week to get the paintings framed, cataloged, submitted. Ms. Rivera handled the paperwork, listed them under Student Showcase, Mixed Media Collection. She didn't tell the fair organizers what they were about. Didn't warn them. Just submitted them as a series on personal truth and public perception. The fair committee approved them without question. Why wouldn't they? I was just quiet Lily, the poor girl who'd had an accident, making art as therapy. They probably thought it would be sweet, inspirational. They had no idea what was coming. The fair opened on a Saturday morning. My parents wheeled me there in a wheelchair, still playing the role of concerned caretakers. They hadn't seen the paintings. Nobody had except Ms. Rivera. The student showcase was set up in the central pavilion. My 6 canvases hung in a row, impossible to miss. Ms. Rivera had made sure they were positioned prominently, right at eye level, lit perfectly by the morning sun streaming through the pavilion's glass roof. I watched people's faces as they walked by. Confusion first as they recognized Ethan in the paintings. Then recognition. Then shock. One woman, a teacher from school, stopped in front of the 3rd painting, staring at Ethan's hands on the boulder. She looked at it for a long time, then turned to her companion and whispered something. They both looked at me, sitting in my wheelchair nearby. Their expressions changed. An older couple studied the 5th painting, the bedroom scene. The man pointed to the reflection in the window, to Ethan's smile. "That's the mayor's son," he said. "Why would she paint him like that?" More people gathered. Whispers spread. I heard my name, Ethan's name, the word accident, repeated like a question. Then Sarah and Mackenzie arrived, the girls who'd visited me with their teddy bear and sympathy. They stopped dead in front of the paintings. "Oh my God," Mackenzie breathed. "Is she saying?" "She's lost it," Sarah said, but her voice was uncertain. "She's completely making stuff up now." "Look at the details, though." Mackenzie moved closer to the 3rd painting. "That's his jacket. That's exactly what he was wearing. How would she know that unless?" They both turned to look at me. I met their eyes steadily. Ethan arrived with his parents around noon. The mayor was in his element, shaking hands, posing for photos with constituents, his wife smiling that practiced political spouse smile. Ethan walked between them, the golden child probably planning to give some speech about resilience and mental health awareness. They made their way toward the student section, still smiling. Ethan saw the paintings first. I watched the color drain from his face. Watched him freeze mid-step, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. His hand grabbed his mother's arm, tight enough that she winced. "Ethan, what?" She followed his gaze and gasped. The mayor turned, saw the paintings, and his expression went from confused to furious in seconds. People were staring now, phones coming out, the crowd growing thicker around my exhibition. What the hell is this? He demanded, his voice loud enough that conversation stopped, heads turned. I wheeled myself forward. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out steady. It's my perspective on what happened that day in the forest. This is slander. Ethan's mother hissed, her face red. She's making up lies because she's embarrassed about her mental health issues. I'm not making anything up. I pulled out my phone, the cracked screen glinting in the sunlight. I have the whole thing recorded. Every word, every sound, including your son rehearsing his lie while I was trapped under rocks. The crowd had grown larger now. I recognized faces. The paramedic who'd believed Ethan's story at the scene.
Dr. Martinez, the therapist.
My parents looking confused and frightened. Ms. Rivera, standing at the edge of the crowd, her arms crossed, her expression fierce. The mayor's face was deep red now, a vein throbbing in his forehead. You're a disturbed young woman, he said, his voice cold and controlled. This is a desperate attempt to shift blame for your own reckless behavior. This is defamation, and we will be pursuing legal action. Then pursue it. I pressed play on the phone. The recording filled the pavilion. In the sudden quiet, every word was crystal clear. My voice. I don't know, Ethan. Those trails are marked dangerous for a reason. Ethan's laugh. That's exactly why nobody goes there. Fast chatter, their conversation on the hike. Then, move over there. I want you in the shot. The sound of heavy breathing.
Strain.
Ethan, what are you? I just want to see if it'll roll. My voice, desperate. Don't. Please don't. The grinding of rock. My scream, raw and terrified. The crash, massive and final. Then smaller sounds, rock settling. My muffled crying from somewhere far below. And then Ethan's voice, clear as day. Okay. Okay, think. Think. A pause. Footsteps. She climbed out there herself. She's been acting weird lately. Stressed about school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. Mental health thing. They'll buy that. More footsteps. Lily? Oh my God, Lily, are you okay? The shift in his voice was dramatic, unmistakable. From calculated planning to performed panic. I let the recording play, through my desperate pleas for help, through Ethan's reassuring lies, through the arrival of the rescue team and his smooth delivery of his fabricated story. The silence after the recording ended was absolute. Every face in the crowd had changed. The pity was gone. The doubt was gone. What remained was shock, anger, and something that looked like shame. I looked at Ethan. His face had gone from red to white, his eyes wide, his breathing rapid. His mother had her hand over her mouth. His father's jaw was clenched, so tight, I could see the muscle jumping. Ethan started, then stopped. His voice came out thin, young. That's not, you don't understand. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. But someone did get hurt. Ms. Rivera stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silence. And instead of telling the truth, instead of accepting responsibility, you made a 15-year-old girl believe she was crazy. You made her parents doubt her. You made an entire community treat her like she was unstable, all to protect yourself. It was an accident. Ethan's voice cracked. I was scared. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. So you lied. My voice was quiet, but it carried. Everyone was listening now. You lied, and you made everyone think I was mentally ill. You started a GoFundMe and collected money off my trauma. You made yourself the hero of a story where you were the villain. Ethan's mother grabbed his arm. Don't say anything else. We're leaving.
Now.
Did you know? Someone in the crowd called out. Did you know he was lying? The mayor's wife didn't answer, just pulled Ethan toward the exit. But people weren't moving out of their way. The crowd had become a wall. Answer the question, another voice said. Did you know your son lied? The mayor's face was dark with rage. This recording proves nothing except that there was an accident and my son was traumatized. He's a 16-year-old boy who made a mistake in a moment of panic. This girl is trying to ruin his life because she's unstable. Stop calling her unstable. The shout came from an unexpected source, my mother, pushing through the crowd, her face wet with tears. "Stop it. Just stop." She came to my wheelchair, dropped to her knees in front of me.
I'm sorry.
"I'm so sorry, baby. You tried to tell us, and we didn't listen. We didn't want to believe." Her voice broke. My father was there too, his hand on my shoulder, his own eyes red. "We failed you," he said simply. The paramedic who'd been at the scene stepped forward. "I believed him," she said, her voice shaking. I heard her trying to tell me something different, and I dismissed it.
I'm sorry.
Others were starting to speak up now. A teacher. I told other teachers she was having a mental health crisis. The school counselor. I recommended she be evaluated for depression without ever asking her side of the story. It was like a dam breaking, everyone suddenly needing to confess their part in silencing me. And through it all, Ethan stood frozen, his face crumbling, the golden shine finally tarnished beyond repair. "I'm sorry," he whispered, looking at me. "I'm so sorry. I was scared of what my dad would do if I told the truth. I was scared of losing everything. I didn't think. You didn't think I mattered," I finished for him. "You didn't think my truth mattered as much as your reputation." He flinched like I'd hit him. The mayor made one last attempt to control the situation. "We'll be speaking to our lawyers. This recording was obtained without consent." "It's a one-party consent state," Ms. Rivera said calmly. She had every legal right to record. And even if she didn't, nothing on that recording is going to help your son's case. A reporter from the local paper was taking notes, her camera out. "Mayor Cole, do you have any comment on your son's actions?" The mayor grabbed Ethan's arm and pushed through the crowd, his wife following. Ethan looked back once, his eyes meeting mine, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his face. Not just shame, understanding. The knowledge that he'd broken something that couldn't be fixed, and it was entirely his fault. They disappeared into the crowd, leaving a wake of stunned silence behind them. The fair continued around us, but everything had changed. People approached me, some apologizing, some asking questions, some just standing in front of the paintings in silence, processing what they'd heard. A reporter from the local paper asked for an interview. Then another reporter from a bigger paper 2 towns over. Then a TV news crew showed up, having heard about it on social media. The story was spreading. My parents stayed close, my mother's hand on my shoulder, my father's face rigid with guilt. They didn't try to make excuses. They didn't try to explain their betrayal away. They just stood there, bearing witness to what I'd needed to do alone. Ms. Rivera fielded questions from reporters with practiced ease, protecting me while making sure the story got out. "Lily will make a statement when she's ready," she kept saying. "Right now, let her art speak for itself." A police officer approached. Not the one who'd closed the case originally, but Detective Morrison, a woman I recognized from school safety assemblies. She looked at the paintings, listened to the recording when I played it for her again, and took careful notes. "I'm reopening the investigation," she said quietly. This is not what was presented to us initially." "Will he be charged with anything?" I asked. She hesitated. "It's complicated. What he did was reckless, but proving criminal intent is difficult. The lie, however." She looked at her notes. "Filing a false report, interfering with an investigation, possible fraud regarding the GoFundMe. We'll see what the DA says." It wasn't enough. Part of me wanted him arrested, wanted to see him face real consequences. But another part of me, the part that had spent weeks being called unstable, understood that legal consequences weren't the only kind that mattered. Ethan had lost something that couldn't be replaced: people's trust. His golden reputation. The future he'd been counting on. That night, lying in bed, I checked social media. The story had exploded. Photos of my paintings were everywhere, shared and reshared. The recording had been posted on multiple platforms. People were discussing it, debating it, analyzing every detail. But it wasn't just about me and Ethan anymore. It had become something bigger. A conversation about privilege and accountability. About how we believe the popular kids, the ones with power, over the quiet ones. About how easily society gaslights victims when believing them would be inconvenient. My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from people I didn't know, sharing their own stories of being dismissed, of being called crazy, of having their truth erased. "Thank you for speaking up," one message said. "This happened to me in high school, and nobody believed me either." "Your paintings made me cry," said another. "I've never seen someone capture what that feels like so perfectly." Some messages were negative. People defending Ethan, saying I was ruining his life over a mistake, that I should have handled it privately. But those voices were drowned out by the others, the ones who understood. The weeks after the fair were complicated in ways I hadn't anticipated. Ethan's family hired lawyers, just as I'd expected. They threatened defamation suits, tried to get the paintings removed from all social media platforms, claimed I was harassing their son. But the recording made their case impossible. You can't sue someone for defamation when they're telling the truth. The mayor announced he wouldn't be running for re-election. The statement said it was to spend more time with family, but everyone knew why. The town council had started asking questions about other times he'd used his position to protect his son or sweep things under the rug. The GoFundMe was shut down, and the money returned to donors. Ethan issued a public apology, written by lawyers, that said all the right words without actually taking responsibility. "I made errors in judgment during a traumatic situation," was as close as he came to admitting he'd lied. The lacrosse team didn't just bench him. They removed him entirely. The college scouts who'd been courting him vanished. His friends, one by one, stopped sitting with him at lunch, stopped inviting him to parties, stopped pretending everything was normal. I saw him sometimes in the hallways at school when I finally returned. He looked smaller somehow, hunched into himself, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Part of me expected to feel triumph. Instead, I mostly felt tired. One day, about a month after the fair, he approached me at my locker. I tensed, but he kept his distance, his hands in his pockets. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me," he said quietly. "And I don't blame you. But I needed to say, the lawyer apology wasn't real. What I said, it wasn't what I wanted to say." I closed my locker, leaned on my crutches, and waited. "I was scared," he continued, "of my dad, of losing everything, of what people would think. And I convinced myself that if I just stuck to the story, it would become true. Like, if enough people believed it, that would make it real." He swallowed hard. "I didn't think about what it was doing to you. I didn't let myself think about it. And that makes it worse, doesn't it? That I chose not to think about it."
"Yeah," I said.
"It does."
"I'm sorry."
"Really sorry. Not the lawyer version."
"Me."
His eyes were red. "I know that doesn't fix anything. I know you'll probably never forgive me. I needed you to hear it from me. Not from a statement my parents' PR team wrote." I studied his face. He meant it. I could see that. But meaning it didn't erase what he'd done. "I appreciate you saying that," I said finally. "But you're right. It doesn't fix anything. You broke something that can't be repaired. Not just between us, but in me. Do you understand that?" I spent weeks thinking I was crazy. Weeks questioning my own reality. That kind of damage doesn't go away just because you're sorry now. He nodded, tears spilling over. "I know. I hope you actually learn from this," I said. "I hope you become someone different. Someone better. But I won't be around to see it." He nodded again and walked away. I watched him go and felt, not closure, exactly, but something close to it. My parents were trying in their own awkward way. Family therapy twice a week, where a counselor helped them understand what gaslighting was, how they'd participated in it, how their desire to avoid conflict with the mayor's family had cost them their daughter's trust. "We taught you that your voice didn't matter," my mother said in one session, crying. "We taught you that powerful people get to decide what's true." I'm so ashamed. It wasn't easy, forgiving them. Some days I couldn't. Some days I could barely look at them. But other days, when my mom brought me coffee while I painted, or when my dad stood up to someone at his work who made a dismissive comment about that girl who made a big deal out of nothing, I could see them trying. Trying had to count for something. Ms. Rivera became more than my art teacher. She became my mentor, my advocate, the adult who'd believed me when no one else would. She helped me apply for art scholarships, wrote recommendation letters that apparently made admissions officers cry, and introduced me to other artists who'd used their work to tell difficult truths. Art is power, she told me once. It's one of the few languages that can bypass people's defenses and make them feel what you felt. Don't ever forget that. I got into 3 art programs, including one with a full ride to a prestigious school 2 states away. The acceptance letter mentioned my powerful series on personal truth and social perception specifically. I chose that one. The one that would take me far from this town, from these memories, from the girl I used to be. But before I left, I did one more painting. It was different from the others. Not realistic, but abstract. Swirls of color, dark at the bottom, grays and blacks and deep blues, representing the silence, the drowning. And then, rising through it, streaks of red and gold and white, breaking through to the surface. And at the very top, a girl's face, mouth open, finally breathing. I titled it Surfacing. I gave it to my parents. They hung it in the living room, where the decorative glass door used to be before my brother's accident. A different accident, a different lie, a different family that had fallen apart and was trying to rebuild. Every family has their breaking point. The question is what you build from the pieces.
Not always heavy subjects.
Sometimes just light, color, the way shadows fall across ordinary objects. The small beauties nobody notices because they're too busy looking at the shiny things. But I also painted the hard stuff, the truths that make people uncomfortable, the stories nobody wants to tell. Because art, I learned, isn't about making people comfortable. It's about making them see. I'm writing this now, months later, sitting in my bedroom with my sketchbook and a cup of coffee that's gone cold. My leg has healed, though it aches when it rains. The cast is gone, replaced by a faint scar that runs along my thigh, like a reminder written in skin. I think about that day in the forest sometimes, about how one moment, one choice, one lie can crack your world open, about how I almost let myself disappear into someone else's narrative. But I didn't. And if you're reading this, if you've ever felt invisible or silenced or told that your truth doesn't matter because it's inconvenient for someone more important, I want you to know something. Your voice matters. Even if it shakes. Even if it's quiet. Especially if it's quiet. Because the quiet ones are always underestimated. People think silence means acceptance, agreement, defeat. They're wrong. Sometimes silence is just gathering strength. Sometimes it's choosing your moment. Sometimes it's waiting until you have something worth saying. And when you finally speak, when you finally show them what you see, what you know, what you've carried alone in the dark, that's when they realize they should have been listening all along.
So speak, paint, write, sing, build, create.
Tell your truth, whatever form it takes. And don't let anyone convince you that you're unstable just because your reality doesn't match their convenient fiction. You're not crazy. You're not a problem. You're not too much or too little or too anything. You're just you. And that's more than enough. My name is Lily. I'm 16 now. And I'm still here, still creating, still refusing to be quiet about the things that matter. And I'm not going anywhere.